2, 1. We're live! Hello and welcome to the Everything Sales Show. Is the right way? That's Richard.
And that is Louisa.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really pleased that you're joining us. We'd love to know where you're watching from today. So please pop your hometown in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.
Brilliant.
Okay, Rich.
Brilliant. So today this is not a formal kind of webinar stuff with loads of stuff that we're preaching at you and everything else. Lou and I have a chat most weeks about things that are going on sales wise, and we often get into some quite detailed chats about things, and we thought, wouldn't it be great just to see how things work if we kind of got together on an FB Live kind of thing. So we're trying it out. It may work, it may not work, but hopefully it will. We're going to keep it really light. So please come in with some questions and we'll try and answer. We'll give our opinions. I think that's it. Not necessarily answers, but we'll give our opinions on things. And we've really got 3 subjects that we want to talk about tonight in the hour that we've got. We want to talk about how prepared our sales teams for going back during 2021. We've had a really horrid year. I think everybody can appreciate that. We've had an awful year. But there's lots of sales forces out there that some have carried on working right the way through and some haven't. And we just want to have a bit of a discussion about how we're preparing for that. We also then want to have a conversation about social selling. And Lou's going to lead that bit, I think, as we get to that. And then finally, our third subject tonight, assuming we don't get taken off into different areas with you guys asking questions, is going to be commission schemes. And I think Lou and I both recognise that, me as a sales director and Lou as a recruitment person, that the biggest reason why we see people looking for roles in sales environments, or one of the main reasons, is that they always state their commission schemes are no good. And when you start to dig into it, we've got some real good ideas as to why that's the case. But first of all, let's kind of I'm going to open this up with a bit of a story. So me and Lou have known each other now for about 3 years. And my first experience of working with Lou was, picture the scene. We're at St Pancras station, and we were meeting just at the hotel near the Champagne Bar in St Pancras. There was myself and my HR manager at the time in my previous company, and I was looking to build a sales force, big and proper. And I was introduced to Lou, and we had a great meeting. And I'm going to be serious for just a second. Of all the recruitment agencies that I've worked with in the past, the one thing that Louisa did to me was challenge me hugely. And I felt that I'd gone for a meeting where perhaps I was going to be asking Lou what she did, and actually came away thinking she's just interrogated me for the last hour. But I really like that. So that was the first time I met Lou, and we've been working together, putting people in employment, in sales roles ever since. And even now I'm working in my own business, I'm still recommending clients to Lou and everything else. And I never have a problem with that, because I know, both from a employment perspective, but also from an employee perspective, they get looked after brilliantly. So there you go, Lou. There's a bit of an intro for you. Your turn on me now. So make it good, please.
Thank you for that. So yeah, absolutely right. I had to break down the doors of the HR director to get in with this company and to get to see Richard at the time. And, you know, it was one of them where he kind of rang me and said, right, can you get to London tomorrow? Because if you can, I can introduce you to Richard and the sales manager as well. And, you know, we'll see if we can get you in there, kind of thing. So it was all very last minute, didn't have much time to prepare. So yeah, went along to meet Richard. And Dave Davies, I don't know if you're out there right now, but you taught me something that, sorry, Rich, I've got a bit of a confession to make about that meeting. Do you remember when I kind of went in and I said to you, I'm really sorry, but I'm really nervous. I don't do a lot of new business development. I do a lot of work by word of mouth. And so I'm not used to pitching for new clients. So forgive me, but I'm very nervous. Do you remember that?
I remember it really well. And my natural instincts kicked in to say, please don't worry, we'll look after you.
Yeah, you did. Well, I have got a confession to make. I wasn't anywhere near as nervous as what I made out. And actually, Dave Davies actually taught me a trick in sales. And he said, you know, if you sort of act vulnerable or almost play the dummy card to start off with, then it disarms people straight away. And that's exactly what happened with Richard. And he was like, oh, don't you worry, you've got nothing to be nervous about. And his guard was down, and that was it. I was in there challenging him on everything that he said. And by the end of it, he said, right, well, that's it. We want you on board, and no recruiter has ever done what you've done today. And then he said, there you go. That wasn't so bad, was it? You came across really well. And yeah, sorry, Rich, I wasn't.
To be fair, fantastic. David Davies has just come in on the messages and said, don't blame me. See, I told you. And you are so right, because I think I learned that technique about 30 years ago when I was at Lyrico cold calling, and in my script, my first words and I remember it even to this day, walking on industrial estates and everything else, was I'd walk in all timid and go, wonder if you can help me, and the person that sat behind the desk were, oh, bless him. And that's how it worked. And you did me up a kipper, Louise. And as my wife will tell me all the time, is I am a total sucker when it comes to good salespeople. Good salespeople, I will buy huge amounts from, and yeah. So there you go. It's one of those things that guilty as charged.
So first two tips then of the day are bring out the dummy card, because it disarms your panel and gives you a distinct advantage, and act like a cute little boy like Rich did when cold calling, and just ask if you could possibly help him. And
all you need. That's all you need. That's all you need. So I've got the questions and stuff coming in here. So David Davis has come in saying he's got a proud dad moment kicking off.
Say that again. I missed that, Rich.
David Davis has come in with saying proud dad moment. And Stephen Broadhurst has come in saying top tips. So there you go. We've done our work already. And Lydia Butler, great stuff. So there you go.
I'm glad you're getting the messages, because I'm not getting any of them. I don't know what's going on with the technology, but you're doing a great job of it. So I'm going to leave it.
As they're coming in, I'll keep reading them and everything else. There is also something else that I just want everybody to be really clear on tonight. Just above my left ear, there's a spinning row of hearts that are going backwards and forwards, which is part of the BeLive software. It's not. I was a bit worried tonight that it would be pancake tossing, and that would be going on in the top corner, and people would make their own decisions about what was going on there. But this is not me sending my undying love to everybody, although I love you all.
I actually love you undying love for me, but hey,
I'm taken with my lovely wife.
We actually did. We were hoping, because we had this discussion earlier on when we trialed out the software, and Rich was saying, "Can you just get rid of those hearts? Just get rid of those hearts." And I was like, I don't know how to do it. And we figured out it's a seasonal thing from BeLive, but we were hoping they were going to change to pancakes by now. But no, the love hearts are still there. It's very cute, very cute.
So look, that's kind of us. We're 10 minutes in. We've had a bit of a chat. Warmed everybody up, Louisa. Shall we get into our first subject?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Which is your part, by the way.
Sorry, there was a message just came up from Paul Greenwood that asked a question that I think we ought to park. Let's get into our first subject. But Paul Greenwood has asked: so, are good salespeople born or bred? Your views, please.
Ooh,
so
that's a good one.
I think that's a great question, and I've got an opinion on that. So let's hold that, but let's get into the first subject. And I promise you, Paul, that at some stage we will come back to that question and give you our thoughts.
In the meantime, if anybody else has got any comments on that, that would be brilliant if you could pop it in the comments box, and let's see what our audience thinks in the meantime.
Absolutely, absolutely. So right, so we've come out, or we're hopefully, with Boris's unlock plan being announced hopefully next week, and coming slowly out of lockdown number 3 for where I am, which is in the south of England. But I know some people are on lockdown number 2. But it's been a really tough winter, I think, for lots of people. But I think a real legitimate kind of question that we need to ask ourselves now is what are we doing to prepare our sales teams out there for coming out of lockdown? And I guess the one thought that I'm going to kind of throw out there is that there's kind of two, from my experience speaking to businesses at the moment, there are kind of 2 businesses that I see. There are the businesses that have prospered through lockdown, and their salespeople are going out there, possibly in the healthcare market, etc., and have done really well, and have probably noticed nothing other than moving to a social selling environment rather than being face to face. But there are huge amounts of companies out there where salespeople have been on furlough for the best part of a year now. And I guess the analogy I would raise is if I after a year off playing golf or playing badminton, which is my sport, tried to go back and play at the same level I did a year ago without some kind of phased return, I'd be in real trouble. And it kind of raises loads of questions for me about how we are thinking about coming back after this lockdown. Because I'll share some stories as we go. But what are your thoughts, Louisa, on this?
Yeah, and I've seen it from all sides, because I get, I obviously work in a variety of sectors. So I've seen the companies that are booming, industries that are booming technology, packaging, hygiene. And then actually, when I did the stats, 43% of my client base were companies that sold into the hospitality marketplace when lockdown happened. So that was nearly half of my business. So I know there's a lot of people within this group that fall into that category that do service the hospitality sector, and they've really, really suffered amongst others. And what I'm finding with candidates that I've been speaking to, or people that I'm speaking to, because naturally these people on furlough are keeping their eyes open for other jobs because they don't know what's going to happen, but particularly the ones that haven't been treated very fairly by their employers in this time. And what I mean by that is they haven't been kept engaged and communicated with during this time. So what I'm finding is a real lack of confidence generally, and I think that doesn't just apply to the salespeople, but I think for anybody that's been stuck at home for this certain amount of time, they've lost their identity, they lose their self-esteem, the mental health kind of kicks in. And people that I see that I could normally look at a CV and think, wow, you've worked for that company, I know them, they're really good, you've worked for this company, you're going to be an awesome candidate. And I speak to them and they're so nervous. It's really destroyed people's confidence. So, we've got to think about how these people are going to be when they get back into a sales environment, because we all know that to sell, you've got to be on top form, you've got to have your A game, you've got to be confident, you've got to be motivated, and these people are on the floor. So, and I think the companies that are going to come out best are the ones that have had regular contact with these people, whilst they're at home, they've kept them involved, they've kept them engaged, and also people that have continued to upskill. But there's definitely a skills gap in terms of social media and selling online for those people that haven't continued to work through.
Yeah, I agree totally. There's a couple of questions come in that I'll just take while you do that. So Andrew, good evening, Andrew Bugden. How the devil are you? Yes, the stream is being recorded. So if you are desperate to go and have your dinner, go and have it. You can watch it on YouTube tomorrow. That's absolutely fine. But we will miss your questions, sir. So I urge you to stay.
Hello, Andrew.
Ollie has asked, do you think the pandemic will have accelerated the skills and growth of those continuing to work or hindered them? And I guess that kind of leads on to your comment there about the confidence factor. And in my view, I think that's very much about the company they work for. So there's a couple of things that have happened in the last year. We've got a situation where furlough has happened, and the one thing that you can do when you're on furlough is train your salespeople, because it doesn't have any commercial impact there and then in in the commercial activity of the business. It's just training your salespeople for when they come back. So just to give you a better example, March 17th last year, I had 60 salespeople that I put on furlough. May 26th, they came back last year. And between March and May, we just went into online training, social selling, teaching them what they needed to do. But it was also more about supporting them and helping them. So we did the catch-up calls in the morning, the catch-up calls in the afternoon, but we worked really, really hard so that when we released them, like Coiled Springs on the 26th of May, within 6 weeks, they went absolutely crazy selling. And it was really interesting. We saw a massive peak and then it just started to drift a bit because we'd prepared them to go out, I guess, after that lockdown. So I think that probably answers your question, Ollie. I think it depends. I think it depends on the company, and it depends whether the company has taken their responsibility to their salespeople seriously. That's what I would say, Louise. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I'd add to that. I think it depends on the company and it depends on the people, because the people working for the company are obviously dealing with the pandemic in different ways. And I suppose the company's got to be mindful that they're not pushing things on those individuals, especially if they are struggling in their own way. But I think what companies could do more is be definitely more of the arm around the shoulder and the contact. But in terms of upskilling, I think they can be a lot more suggestive in terms of there's so many free courses and so many courses available. I think they should be almost, if they could be giving out a newsletter or something regularly to say, this is a great LinkedIn course, I suggest you get on it. Or, I've just been in this webinar, which is about selling on Facebook, or, this training course is something which is brilliant, which tells you how to communicate better with your customers online, how to make appointments. So I think leaders could be really helpful for these, because all these people I speak to are saying, God, I don't know what's happening out there, and I'm bored, and I'm losing my identity. And I'm actually suggesting it to people on furlough. I'm saying, well, I think you should upskill in this area, and I'm actually emailing stuff of value they can be doing, books that they can read. I'm not sure, and I'll ask our audience, do you know if companies are doing this kind of thing? Have you received this from your leaders? Are you a leader that has implemented something like this? If you have, we'd love to hear from you.
It's interesting. David Davis, just coming on from your point, has come in with interview performance is at an all-time low, massive confidence issues, which I think is really important. It's interesting that it kind of leads on to one thing about preparing your sales force. And this is going to be kind of my final point before we move on to other subjects and things. But I was the sales director through first lockdown of a fairly major organization. And it was quite interesting. As we went through the lockdown period, we were concentrating on upskilling, learning and development, supporting, coaching and helping. And what seemed to happen as we started to go live, I felt it as the sales director, the pressure on my shoulders coming in, because the moment I took 60 salespeople off of furlough was the moment that our overhead shot up within the business, and the board and the directors were looking at me to say, well, you're the sales director, you've made the decision. And I remember my old MD turning to me and saying, it was a courageous decision you made. Well, it didn't feel like it at the time. It was made on the basis that I felt we were going to do the right thing. But the big thing about it was making sure we took that pressure away from the salespeople, because they already feel, and I guess where I would come from now is think about how your salespeople are feeling now. And I was having a conversation today, funnily enough, with a client, and I was saying it was an MD of a business, and he was talking to me about, they've had 9 months off. My sales guys are coming back next month when we come out of lockdown, and I'm going to expect this, that, and the other. And it was like, no, that's the worst attitude that you can have, because you're going to drive disengagement. You're going to have major issues with the health and well-being of your sales force, and ultimately they're going to leave your business. And I was talking to him about being really counterintuitive to what he was suggesting, which was, nurture your sales force, look after them, train them really well, phase their return. When we're bringing these people back after furlough, it's like coming back from an illness or maternity leave. you've got to bring them into the business and build their confidence up, which is exactly where David Davis was talking about, this massive confidence issue. And I think, you know, sales has changed. We're going to talk about social selling in a minute. And, you know, a lot of salespeople would have just got in their cars and gone out there and seen clients. Well, we're in a different world now.
Actually, I think that, you know, people should be taken through almost like a little induction again, because they've actually forgotten how to, not only have they forgotten how to do their jobs, and I know this because my clients are telling me that have brought people back, they've forgotten how to do their jobs, and they certainly don't know how to do it in the new environment. So they need to be put on a ramp target and slowly trained back into the new environment if they want to retain. And I don't know how this is going to go down with the leaders, because they need delivery on their targets, but I think there could be some real quick turnarounds of staff if that doesn't happen.
There will be, unless you look at the well-being front and center of your salespeople when they come back. They will feel, you know, disengaged completely and start to move away. It's changed completely, and that nurture word is the key in all of this. You've got to, you know, the issue is that so many businesses have kind of had this. They're being supported at the moment by government support. Their turnover might be through the floor. Their profitability might be being propped up by the government rather than anything else. The moment they release them off a furlough is their overhead suddenly shoots up. They look at their salespeople and go. And it's just, you know, I know that's kind of repeating what I said, but it scares me that we're going to have some serious issues within that environment if people don't really take it very carefully. And I think there's a lot of talk out there, which pleases me, but it will remain to be seen how it actually happens in the workplace. Because having been on a board and with a group board beyond that, pressing down, the pressure can be huge.
Yeah, and I'm sure, other leaders might be able to comment on this, but for anybody that's thinking, well, it's okay, it's really easy to fill positions at the moment because there's lots of people available, then definitely think again. There are lots of people available, but they're not necessarily the most talented people, or they don't necessarily have the transferable skills into the roles that are required. So, and the really good people are being held onto really, really tightly, and they are very nervous about making a move. So if you are recruiting at the moment and you've experienced this, I'd love to hear your thoughts, but that's certainly what my clients are experiencing at the moment.
Yeah, so we've got a bit of a lull in questions. So before we move on to the next subject, I promised Paul Greenwood we'd come back to it. Is it a good time for us to come back to his questions? So, a good salespeople, born or bred? Your views, please. Go on, Louisa. What's your views?
I think they're kind of nurtured and grown. I strongly believe, I don't think they're born, but I do think that the way that what they're exposed to at a young age and how they're brought up and what challenges they've faced definitely build the characters of a salesperson. I don't know if anybody else agrees with this, but, you know, for me, I think that, you know, somebody that's had a job while they're at school definitely demonstrates traits of somebody that's, well, hardworking anyway. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a salesperson. But somebody that, you know, I find that people that might not have had the recognition when they were younger, they strive for that in sales. So they seek that kind of career, or people that, you know, people have different motivations. And I know Richard and I have spoken about it before. It's about the why. I strongly believe that it's what your character traits end up being from how you've been brought up that lead you into sales and make you good at sales. What do you think?
I don't think you're born a salesperson. Mm-hmm. I think there's several things. I think you're absolutely right. I think your upbringing is really, really key. Are you in an environment where you can express yourself? Are you an expressive kind of personality, etc., etc.? I go back to one of our first videos that we did together, where I talk about people's why and why they have a calling to come into the sales environment, and that may be wherever they've been before, their upbringing, certain things have happened in their lives, whatever that might be. But I like to think, and I've always thought this, and it goes back to what you and I talked about in our very first video, I think, that when I'm interviewing salespeople or potential salespeople at the very start of their career, and I'm not talking about people that are strategic directors and all the rest of it, I'm talking about entry-level sales. What I'm looking for is their why and why they really want to do it. Because it's, if they think that it's a company car, I think this has kind of died out a little bit now, but if they think it's a company car, a mobile phone and an expense account and you go anywhere, then sales is not like that anymore. So, you know, we understand that, but there's still I think sales is a hard professional environment. And for me, that's what I would say. So I don't believe that salespeople are born or bred. I believe that salespeople, some of the greatest salespeople I've worked with, have done many other things before they found sales. And some of the best salespeople I've ever worked with have coached and counseled and supported and learned sales themselves to become great at what they do. But that's just as I say, that's my opinion. We've got some stuff coming in here, Louisa. So we've got, I think it's Paul Sleck. Is that? I think that's the name. Interesting question. Before we move on, because I think we're getting to the stage where we need to hit on
your questions. Don't know what. No.
I've got Paul Sleck here. Buyers are also on furlough. So what do you think is going to be the challenges to get in contact with them, as there will be a lot of noise and lots of people trying to get hold of them when they are back? How do you think our teams will cope with the challenge of just getting hold of a buyer? So if you want to, do you want to take that first one, or do you want me to take it?
Well, I've got a feeling on that. So I suppose it depends on the type of buyers, but I think, you know, these people are hanging out in places now. So, you know, I think we should be looking at where are they hanging out, you know, whether it's socially, on platforms, where do they network? All these things are going on online. And even though buyers are on furlough, you know, a lot of them will be hanging out somewhere. So I think you know, ideally you'd want to be cultivating some relationships in a, maybe even in a non-work situation, a social situation, or some kind of group sort of networking situation, to try and do that before everybody else just goes in cold when you come back. Have I answered the question, or is that not?
No,
quite?
I think so. I think I've got a couple of things that I would add to that, because I kind of agree with that. We're coming on to social selling in a minute, but the big thing that I think has started to happen in recent months, where salespeople are not getting nurtured, is if you look at the sales process and think research, and I presume from where Paul is coming from, he's looking at new business rather than clients, because in the client world, you would like to think that you can approach your existing clients in a slightly different way, understand when those people are coming back, and get time in front of them because they're your existing clients. I think the challenge will come for new business, and I think and it depends on what marketplace you're in. Clearly, if you're in the hospitality, as you said earlier, you're in a really difficult marketplace, and you're going to have to think really carefully about how and when you do approach those people. But I think it comes down to researching and getting those relationships. If you're just trying to whack people at the moment with social contact and trying to get to see people, you're probably going to come unstuck. So my view would be exactly as you say: try and nurture those relationships. But the big thing for me at the moment that I'm seeing when I'm speaking to sales guys is what Zoom has tended to do is I've seen them shorten the sales process. So rather than trying to really build a rapport and get to know people, and not necessarily the buyers, bear in mind, you're going to have to expand it. Businesses will still be operating. Their buyers may be on their buyers may be on furlough, but there will be other people in that organization that you can talk to build a relationship map for when you actually get out there and see them.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I know that you're not necessarily going to be just sort of cold calling people just off the cuff, but actually if these people are on social, you can get them. There's lots of automated tools that do find numbers and emails. you can be talking to these people now. And actually, I found when we first went into lockdown, it was easier to telephone numbers that you got off of LinkedIn. It was people actually quite enjoyed speaking to you because they had nothing to do and they weren't aware of what was going on in the outside world. Now, obviously, not what you're going to be doing is ringing them up and selling to them, but I think the first approach has to be about, how can I help? You've had a really tough time, where can I help you with resources, with information, with, intelligence in the market? I'm speaking to lots of other people in the same situation as you. And I think if the first approach is to serve or give value, then that will be much better received.
Completely. Ian Squire has come in with a point, which is quite interesting. Employee engagement is at a record low in the UK, now around 12%. How has that been allowed to happen? And what do sales leaders need to change as current leadership methods are not working? Interesting point. I'm going to disagree with one of those points because I think it depends on the company, which is current leadership methods are not working. I think in some companies, leadership methods are working really, really well. But I think the employment engagement, I think what I'm seeing in companies, I don't know whether you'd agree with this, Lou, is that we hit the first lockdown and the engagement was full on, absolutely full on. We'd be doing morning catch-ups, afternoon catch-ups, cup of tea on a Friday night or cocktail night on a Friday night. But more than that, we would be learning and development stuff. We'd be training them and everything else. And I think as we've gone through this process, and bear in mind, some of the sales leaders are also on furlough. So you've got not only the first line leaders on furlough, but then you've got to hold the second line leaders absolutely to account, where they're probably so caught up in their own strategy piece of trying to keep the business going, they're forgetting about their people. And at the end of the day, if they forget about the people, they're going to forget about their business at the end of the day, because it's people that will bring them back. So I think the way I would talk about that, Ian, is I think, how has it been allowed to happen? I think there is a lag now. I think people are tired. I think everything started, it was novel, going to Zoom. And I think now we're on, we've got childcare issues at home. We've got people that are really struggling with their motivation at home. And actually, this is a time where we've got to accelerate that support, not fall off of it. And I think people in businesses have started to fall off of it because they're focusing so much on their business and their strategy and their P&Ls, and they're almost lagging behind on their people. So that would be my kind of point on that. I don't know whether you'd say any more on that, Lou?
Yeah, well, I also think that where the furlough has been available, a lot of companies naturally have taken advantage of that. But what they've done is they've left the existing staff and teams and leaders really under-resourced. And so they're struggling to survive and to cope with the amount, in some cases doing 3 people's workload, whilst the company benefits from not having to pay all of the staff. So I think that definitely takes its toll as well. And I think the engagement in these kind of situations needs to come from the very top, from the CEO, from the MD, because they're the ones making the decisions, and they're the ones that can reassure the workforce. They're the companies that have done that right from the top have done well. You can't leave it to the sales managers, like you say, that are on furlough. It has to come from the top.
And there you go. It happens in every business. It's never changed in time. The culture and what your purpose is and what you stand for as an organization will always start with the MD at the top, and they will drive it. And I've seen organizations where you've had individual sales teams trying to create a culture that isn't supported by the echelons above, and they just get cut loose, and they become battle weary after a while, and everything else. Nikki Gale's coming with an interesting point, Lou. Especially when only some of your team are furloughed and the others are kept on, it's hard to keep the teams working. I think it's a really tough scenario, and I can only give you my experience of doing that, and it's been about trying to create environments where people who are on furlough and off furlough at the back end of the day and the front of the day can come together as part of a team, But you've got to do some serious coaching around the people that are on both sides, because you've got the people that are working feeling frustrated that the people are still getting paid on furlough, and you've got the people who are on furlough thinking we'd like to be working, and there's those kind of idiosyncrasies that you've got to kind of work through.
Right, I think it's time to talk social selling, isn't it?
Oh, if we must, Louisa, let's have a go at social selling done badly, shall we?
I've got some answers on what's going bad, and I know that you've got some stories, but we would love to hear about what you think about what kind of social selling you've experienced, what's been really bad about it, and have you got any examples of anything good? Because I think if we all share what we find good and what we really, really hate, we're all probably going to learn something along the way. But I suppose I'll start off with some of my learnings, because I've worked the whole way through and had to do quite a lot on social to keep my business afloat. And I think one of the two biggest things that I've learned is it's about giving value to your audience or to your connections or who you're speaking to. So it's not about trying to get an appointment, trying to sell something. It's about building a rapport and offering value. And the other big thing that I've learned is that social selling now is a bit like how the attempts to speak to people needs to be associated with what it used to be like when you were cold calling. When you were cold calling, you would never expect to get through to somebody straight away. You'd never expect them to let you in. You'd never expect them to give you an appointment. So you have to try several times. You have to follow up. And in my experience, it's probably on the third or fourth message to somebody that they actually do come back to you. I think I am certainly somebody that won't respond to somebody straight away. And I know people that I try to speak to won't respond to me straight away, because we're all sussing out, are you serious? Or are you just one of those blank contacts that is going to message me today and then be gone tomorrow? So some of the things that I've found that I really don't like are these, oh my God, when you open it up and then there's this massive spiel about, this is what I do, this is what I can offer you, click here, that is what I don't like about social selling. Have we got any other opinions coming through?
So we've got, just going back to the last point, Heather Sperry's come in and just said a lot of buyers' roles have changed, where home working will be the norm, therefore our sales structure will change. We are lucky we are in construction-based selling, so a lot of it is multi-site, but national contract buyers are now only working in offices 1 day a week, so it'll be hard. Completely agree with that. And that leads really well on to the next point, which was from Ian Squires. So how do sales, we've got a few coming in there. How do sales processes need to change as buyers now wish to engage in different stages now due to move online? So that kind of still kind of puts into that social space. So I think processes will change. I think they'll adapt hugely. I think if we talk about a sales process at a high level, the sales process will remain as is. You will go through the steps of a sale as is. What is changing, in my view, is the way it's done. So very often you'd make a phone call, you'd write, you'd email or whatever. Now we can get to Zoom calls with people without long distance drives. So actually the advantage we have now, and let's look at this from a real positive perspective, is in days gone by, you'd make an appointment with a client that might be 3/4 of an hour, 2 hours away or whatever. And you'd only be able to do probably 2 or 3 calls in a day. Now we have the ability where once we have got hold of that buyer and established the rapport and established that there's a need and all the rest of it, blah, we can then move to that call on Zoom. But what I'm seeing, and I was working with a guy last week and I was just shadowing on a call, lack of research, because they're not doing, if you were driving an hour to get to a client, you'd have done your research. You'd be totally prepared. But because people can get to you now on Zoom, I'm seeing that the research part of the sales process, understanding, people are trying to gauge the rapport and everything else from a quick Zoom call rather than and that's kind of skipped into the front end. And the advice I'm giving to salespeople at the moment is do not change that piece. If you're going to pick up the phone, I'm going to go down a golf analogy again, but it's something I've used with salespeople for years. When you go through and play a hole in golf, you've got to tie up all of the different strokes. You've got to hit a great drive. You've got to hit a great approach. You've got to have a great putt chip, and you've got to get a great putt. Otherwise, you don't get any prize, or you don't hit par. Sales process is exactly the same. And when salespeople will come to me and say they've lost it on price or anything else or whatever it might be, I always go back to the process, because at some point in that sale, they have not followed the process. And I think from my perspective, Ian, sales processes now, people believe that the sales process now is far more dynamic and it can be much, much shorter. I'm actually going completely the other way and say, spend that time to get that rapport, to get that trusted advisor status. Because the one thing you miss as a salesperson when you're on a 2D Zoom call is all of the other senses that you use. Shuffling a piece of paper when somebody's in front of you, the way they're sitting, the way they're moving. You're only getting their face and their tone and their voice when you're talking to them, and you miss so much more. So try not to rush it. That would be my biggest piece.
Yeah, and it's interesting what you said about this, people not doing the things that they would do normally, and about the preparation. I actually had a Zoom call with somebody this week who reached out to me and closed me for an appointment. And I actually said to one of the guys that works here, I've got this Zoom call soon. I've got no idea why I'm doing it, but do you know what? I'm just going to do it because I thought, we're all in sales, and, sometimes you just got to give someone a chance. And he started it off by saying, do you know what? I can't remember why I reached out to you now. I can't remember why I reached out to you now, but I'm glad I did. I thought, oh my God, I was having a hell of a day. I was so busy. I had so much to do. And that's how he started off the conversation. I thought, oh my word, that definitely is an example of that. And the other thing I would say when it comes to Zoom is people are just jumping on Zoom calls without paying attention to the first impressions of not just how they look, but how their surroundings look. So you didn't have to worry about that when you saw people face to face, but you've got to look at the lighting. Can people see people properly? Can they hear you properly? Are you dressed appropriately? No, we don't need to be suited and booted, but are you smart? Is the area tidy? Are you in head and shoulders view? Because people don't want to sort of speak to you when you're kind of like that. And I know some of my earlier videos were a bit like that, actually. So I've learned that. I look like I was just a head like that. And then you get some people kind of turning up half dressed. I've actually had somebody literally half dressed before. So yeah.
Was it the senator in the US this week that turned up and couldn't get the cat filter off? There was a Zoom video floating around where somebody couldn't get they were a cat filter, so they were a cat.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Great. So we got a couple more, and then I think we're getting to the stage because we're a quarter of an hour to go, and we will. Guys,
let me just tell you about a really, really bad mistake I made social selling. Actually, it's just come to me. I was following my own analogy of not giving up at the first hurdle, noticing things on somebody's profile to build a rapport. So I'm like, oh hi, in fact, what I actually did is I said my title was, when will the squash courts reopen? Because I saw that he played squash. And he used to be a head coach. And so I had a bit of a chat with him about that, or tried to have a chat with him about that, tried to sort of build a rapport in that kind of way, didn't answer. A couple of follow-up messages. I know you're really busy right now. Just wondered if you got my message. Oh, by the way, here's some value. Here's a Facebook group. You're clearly a sales leader. Maybe you might want to join. Anyway, I kept doing this, building a rapport, offering value, explaining he's still busy, thinking, why is he not coming back? And this is a lesson learned as well, is when you message people on LinkedIn, doesn't matter how much later you contact them in the future, they can see all of your previous message trail. It never goes away. So it's not like a bad call where they can just forget that you existed. The next time you turn up, they go, oh yeah, that was that one. And this particular man, I'd spelt his name wrong every single message. I mean, I do normally check things like that, but his name was Jonathan, and it was one of those where it should have been an AN at the end instead of an ON, and I'm sure that really annoyed him, but I just didn't realise, and I kept going. And even when I put my hands up and said, I'm not surprised that you haven't come back to me because I've spelt your name wrong all this time, he still didn't go back to me. So I've clearly taken that one off my prospect list, but yeah, lesson learned.
Lesson learned. Now there's a few come in, so I think we can zip through quite a few of these. So JD has come in. How do you plan to correct sales targets for salespeople over the next 12 months once we're out of lockdown? I think we kind of covered that with we've got to create a phased approach. We can't, don't, whatever you do, go out there and hit them full on ramp targets. We've got to ramp them effectively. Heather has come back in. I'm recruiting. I've sent out 20 invites. I've only one has replied via our Launchpad page. So not quite sure. You might want to take that on board, Lou, from a recruitment perspective. Thanks for your comments, Paul, about great insights. That's great. Ollie, you came in again with it's hard enough to understand how people were feeling even with face-to-face interaction with body language. This challenge is even harder now, the current Zoom culture. What are your thoughts on overcoming that? Again, I think lengthen the process, get comfortable in the call, book that additional time, bring things to the table, give to get. Don't come in with I. It's that kind of thing. And then Ian, LinkedIn connection request followed by a hard sell connection made. Oh, Ian, you are a man after my own heart. I can tell you that now.
When you're looking up at those hearts as you say that, it looks really realistic.
I know. It is my biggest frustration when I am on LinkedIn at the moment that somebody connects with me who knows nothing about me, and I then get a selling message straight up. I'm a wealth management company, or I'm a financial advisor, or I'd really like to come and have a chat with you about this, that, and the other, your utilities and stuff. And I just think, oh my God. And that's where I said right at the very beginning, good salespeople I buy loads from, but bad salespeople, it just winds me up. People just have not a clue. So Ian, I'm completely with you on that. And then JD's come in. On paid ads, Facebook only shows your product to people who like your product, not actual buyers. So you feel good with the likes, but get no actual sales. An inexpensive habit. Completely agree with that, JD. I think when people are courting likes and comments and measuring their social interactions by that, it's the old Facebook culture where I remember my mum and dad saying, "Oh, I put this post up and I've got 3 likes," and they were all excited about it. I remember that. And the fact is, let's look at our engagement by how much engagement we get that with real people that really matter, that really want to talk to you. That's really important. I think that's covered some of the questions now. I think we've got 12 minutes, Lou. We've got to cover commissions before we go. My pet subject. We've got to cover that. Unless there's anything else you want to cover on those.
No, not at all. Not at all. I've got some stats here on commission.
Go on.
Yeah, the McKinsey report reported that more than 80% of business-to-business companies adjusted their incentives for sales teams as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak. But what those adjustments actually looked like varied considerably. For example, 30% of the companies surveyed had lowered quotas, but 20% increased them. So, yeah, so companies are increasing targets, decreasing commission. Some are taking away commission altogether. I'd love to hear your views on, how you've experienced adjustments in your own team's targets and commission. And I know it's a subject that Rich loves to speak about very dearly. So
commission, or as I work for an American business last, and it's comp schemes. So we talk compensation schemes. That's kind of where we went with it. And I'm a big advocate of paying people fairly, but I'm also acutely aware that probably 90% of everybody that I interview for a sales role will tell me their commission scheme did not pay what they thought it had paid. They didn't understand the commission scheme, or it was being changed constantly. And I think employers, sales leaders just need to have a think about there's 2 things that happen within a compensation scheme. And I'm a really simple guy. So from my perspective, if it ain't simple and it's not easy to understand, then you will drive a culture that actually creates issues. So there's some really, from my perspective, whenever I've gone in and done compensation schemes or commission schemes with salespeople, the general principles are it's completely uncapped. Why would you ever stop your people selling? So uncap your commission, but make sure your commission is self-funding. Really simple. So self-funding commission schemes that are uncapped. So you don't bring people into, they'll stop at a certain place and they'll showboat for next month. Secondly, it needs to be able to be understood on one page. I've seen commission booklets like that with ways of getting out of paying people and everything else, builds mistrust, etc. And thirdly, get a commission scheme to drive the behaviors you want, not people start with, when they're building commission schemes, this is the amount I want to spend on a commission scheme. Forget that. Look at the behaviors you want to drive in your organization. And my final point, and I'll shut up, Lou, because I know it's my big thing that I talk about, is I was with a company this week and it was really interesting. They've got a consultant in, and the company had said, we want a single commission scheme for everybody in the sales force. And the consultant gone, okay, let's devise it. And they're now 3 months down the road of a commission scheme that they have no clue how it's going to work across all the different roles. And I know we talked about this before. You might want to put the same reward structure in place, but based on the roles you've got within your organization, if you try and fudge it to try and keep it blanket across, you'll end up not driving the right behaviors. So if you just think of role specific behaviors, you'll get a great scheme. And I'm very happy to help anybody with their schemes. I really am, because it's my big thing that will drive huge amounts of loyalty, huge amounts of growth. But you get it wrong, it will drive disengagement. It will drive salespeople talk with one another. It will drive a culture and a wedge through your sales teams like nothing you've ever seen. Sorry, I'm off on one.
No, and if I can add into that, the biggest way to lose a salesperson quickly is to beef up your commission structure and OTE in the interview, only for them to find out it's just not realistic at all. So I think, if you're hiring, then you need to be very clear and very realistic about what somebody can physically earn and when they're expected. When people ask, how much will I earn? You should be able to say to them, look, your first 3 months, you're going to be in training. So, if you hit, some companies give ramp targets and give the opportunities to give commission straight away, which is great. But, if you're in an environment where the sales cycle takes 6 months, you need to kind of give a bit of an idea that actually, the first year earnings are going to look like this, but the second year earnings are going to look like this. Otherwise, you're going to have people coming on board that can't afford to pay their bills and are going to jump ship to somebody else.
I think everybody is violently agreeing with us, because we've had very little in terms of comments.
They're all gone now. They're all gone off to watch Marriage at First Sight, which I'm missing right now.
I was waiting for Best British Celebrity Cook, or whatever it is. Best Celebrity Home Cook, the final. Oh, we've got some coming in. Hang on a second. We've got some. So Stephen Baudet, LinkedIn is a great way to build rapport and your own credibility. I find mixing up posts between sales message and then engagement pieces really helps. Once you do this, I find it easier to start a sales conversation. Brilliant comment, Stephen. Couldn't agree. I think you're in the hygiene marketplace, which is my marketplace as well. And I completely agree. You've got to, within that marketplace, you've got to come across as an expert. So create the environment where you're not necessarily selling, you're creating confidence in that market. Really important. And that goes for any market, I guess, where you're semi-technical sales, I guess. That's really important. Lou, we've got 5 minutes to go.
Well, just touching on from that point that Stephen's just mentioned, thanks for your comment, Stephen. I think you're absolutely right. When it comes to trying to get that first approach with those buyers, or then, if you engage with their posts a lot, then they're going to be a lot warmer when they've seen you liking, commenting, and giving opinions on things that them and their companies are posting. So make a list of the people that you want to target and start engaging with their posts, and that makes it easier.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. I think that's it at the moment on comments. Is there any sort of closing stuff that you want to talk about, Lou, before we finish? Because we've
feedback. Thank you so much for interacting. Obviously, it's a dreaded thing when you do this. Is like, is anybody going to turn up? Is anybody going to ask some questions? So I really want to thank everybody for your support. You do not know how stressed I was before this happened. I actually lost the whole, I haven't even told you this yet, Rich, because we were in such a rush. I lost the whole schedule. The whole thing I set up yesterday, and it all lost. But anyway, it's all gone okay. But thank you everybody for your support. We'd love to know your feedback, and we'd love to know if you'd like us to do this again more regularly, what topics you might want to hear about, and that will help us schedule and tailor our conversations to you sort of moving forward. And if you'd like a summary of the things that we've spoken about today, please put a yes please in the comments, and we will gladly send over the pointers that we've discussed. Anything from you?
Yeah, I think the other thing as well on your point, which is really important, is we're not, this is about expanding the group. We'd love to, we can do this with more than two of us in a conversation. So we'd love, we talk about everything sales. That's our passion. That's what we do and everything else. So, I know there are loads of sales leaders on this call. I'd love to be in a position where we could make this a regular thing without the hearts flashing in the top left-hand corner. And we could really start just exploring various things. So some of those things that actually are happening out there in the market at the moment, the poor engagement, all the things we've talked about at the moment, we can kind of make sure that we're bringing it front and center to the organizations we work with. And at the end of the day, I learn every single day. I talk at the moment about my experiences because it's when I've got it wrong, I can sort of talk with passion about when I've put a commission scheme in really badly, and I know when it goes right. But I'd love to get more engagement with people on this and do it on a regular basis. I think it'd be absolutely fantastic. We've got a couple of other bits just come in quickly just before we finish up. So David Davis has come in. Truly social selling is in person. So pick up the phone. Anti-social selling is dumping diatribe newsfeed in inboxes. Great point. Stephen agreed. Many companies make commission schemes too complicated and have too many conditions. Simple and clear help drive proactive, hungry salespeople. Stephen, bang on. Absolutely bang on. I think we're about there, Lou. We don't want to overrun. We want to keep it just within that hour. We've got 3 minutes to go. I think that's a great point for us to now say, let's go and watch what program was you said.
I've got a chicken jalfrezi out there. I couldn't eat it because I was so busy trying to set all this up, and I was like, no, I'll have it afterwards. So it's out there. I'm off to eat my chicken jalfrezi.
Lou, for me, thanks ever so much. I've loved it. It's been really, really good fun, and let's do more of this. Got everybody on the call, everybody on the online. Thank you for your engagement. As Lou said, it's been fantastic, and love to see you all again soon. It'll be brilliant. Hey, Lou.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks, everybody. See you again soon. Have a great evening.